How to improve your game sense in Black Ops Cold War, or really any Call of Duty, Part 1. In this series, I'll be providing tips on how to improve your game sense as well as examples on how to implement them in your gameplay. But wait, first, what is game sense? The simplest and best explanation I can give is situational awareness. I know, that's broad, but it'll become more clear with every tip. But why is game sense important? Because it allows you to anticipate your opponent's next move, predict how a situation will play out, and it allows you to work with a team of random people, which is majority of the time, without having to communicate. It's like Spidey senses without the getting bit part. In this part of the series, I'll be covering map awareness. And I don't mean learning the layout of every map, although that is important, but that comes with time. What I mean is that your mini-map is your best friend, even when your team doesn't have a UAV or a HARP. So tip number 1, pay attention to your teammates' positions and which direction they're looking. I know, that seems simple, but being conscious of your teammates' positions tells you where you need to be looking and reduces the amount of lanes you need to be covering at any given point, especially when you're trying to capture or defend an objective. For example, this is Crossroads Hardpoint, and we're currently on P3. I'm watching this catwalk area because all the previous enemy pushes on the P1 side of the map, which is the tank side, have been unsuccessful because, as you can see, most of my team is on the hill. I hear shooting, so I peek. After I get that kill, I consider two things. I see that our team has that side of the map locked down. I haven't seen anyone in the catwalk area, so the only other way their team might try to break this hill is from the cliff side. And sure enough, there he is. Where your team is just as important as where they're not. If you find that there's a gap in your map control, fill it. Especially if your team is bunched up in one section of the map, which happens a lot in Hardpoint, be the playmaker and cut off any flank that might come in. Here's another example. We're on raid Hardpoint on P4. I hit the hill to drop a trophy system for my team, because I'm a good teammate, but there are two guys there already covering the front of the hill, so really I'm not helping my team much by also being there. However, I did notice that we don't really have a presence near the laundry area, so I pick up that lane, and sure enough, there was an enemy trying to flank, which could have been bad because if he gets enough kills, we lose those preferred spawns. But I see two red dots in the kitchen and only one teammate there, so I immediately head over to help him out because the likelihood of him winning that 1v2 is low. Your team's position helps you determine where you should be. And that leads me into tip number 2, pay attention to the team death markers. The little skulls that pop up when your teammates die tell you that you should anticipate a gunfight and likely which direction that gunfight's going to come from. For example, I'm coming off of spawn after dying in the kitchen hill, P2 on raid. I break the hill and clear it out. Then I immediately look at my mini-map, which tells me that the pool side is covered by this teammate, and the rest of my team is spawning behind the hill. So that leaves just the front of the hill for me to focus on. But as I engage in this gunfight, I notice that my teammate who was watching the pool side just died. So I immediately know that those two enemy dots will likely break through money. By the way, if these callouts seem a little bit foreign to you, like P1, P2, money, I'm using the Call of Duty League callouts that the teams usually use amongst themselves. So if you're interested in learning some of those callouts, let me know in the comments below and I'll make a video about it. Anyway, back to the clip. I then slide over to the corner that gives me a good view of that money room, because now I have help in the hill. This teammate's watching the front. And I just start firing covering rounds to weaken them for my teammate who himself is weak, but just to make his job a little bit easier and to raise his chances of winning that gunfight. So pay attention to those death markers because it can save you from being ambushed or flanked. Here's an example where not paying attention to those death markers could hurt you. We're on Crossroads and I had flanked all the way around and I'm able to take out two of this guy's teammates and he was still clueless to the fact that I was there. If he had paid attention to where his teammates were falling, he could have maybe saved a second teammate, let alone saved himself. Tip number 3, always keep your eye on the status of an objective. I know, that sounds like an obvious tip, but humor me. In most objective-based game modes, hardpoint, control, domination, you'll not only get an audio cue when your team or the enemy team is capturing an objective, but you can also see it on the minimap, as well as the perimeter of the objective will change colors depending on who's on the objective. But if you're killed or one of your teammates is killed near an objective, and you don't see that that objective is being captured, defended, or contested, it doesn't mean that it's just safe to jump onto the objective because the likelihood is that they're still lingering in that area picking people off until their team can help them push the objective. Here's a perfect example of this. We're playing Hardpoint Apocalypse and P2 is about to pop. I see that most of my team is pushed up in P1, so I anchor here so that we don't lose spawns for the next hill because this is a pretty difficult hill to break from the front. Sure enough, one comes through, then the second kills me. Pay attention to where he goes after I die. There's also only one teammate there, but when I spawn in, I notice that that hardpoint is still vacant, and as I approach, the kill feed is empty. That tells me that my teammate didn't kill him, and actually he just dies. So those two variables tells me that he's likely still at that window. Then this opponent tries to capture the hill, but they're not the same skin that killed me. And I also see this little dot still lurking in that area, so sure enough, he's where I expected him to be. Don't always assume that your teammate got your trade. And just because an objective isn't being captured, it doesn't mean that someone's not watching it. Especially when your team doesn't have a presence in the area, just be wary when you're approaching it. Moving on to tip number 4. Pay attention to where and how you're dying because that can predict your opponent's next move. Perfect example here on Nuketown. I get taken down by an enemy from the right side of the map, but in a few seconds after my death, I notice that there are 2 of them hitting a flank around the house. They'll likely not go through the garage because sometimes it's a little bit risky, so my first thought after spawning is to cover that right side. There's one, and I know there's another, so I just keep shooting, hoping to hit a wallbang, and there he is. People are predictable. When you die to an opponent, it's easy to assume that someone else took care of them. But unless you know for sure, get your revenge. And my 5th and final tip are the perks you can equip to help you improve your game sense. In the perk 1 slot, you have forward intel. This allows your minimap to show a larger area and tells you where your opponents are spawning. But my favorite perk, the one that I always use, is in perk slot 2, and it's assassin. When assassin is equipped, enemies show up on your minimap when they're shooting their gun. Unless of course they have an attachment like a suppressor that suppresses their muzzle flash by 100%, they'll still show up, if only for a second. But the other perk to this is when your team has a spy plane, an enemy on a kill streak will show up with a crosshair indication, and if you kill them, you receive extra score. And with that, those are my 5 tips to heighten your map awareness and improve your game sense. Part 2 in the series will be dedicated to understanding spawns and help you improve your ability to read them on every map. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful in any way, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more content to help you improve your Call of Duty gameplay. Until next time, this was Sablehound, and thank you for watching.
Hey, I want to be famous.